Hey, what's up, guys? It's Thomas Williams from Broad Street Hockey. I have something super special for you guys today. The second I saw this video get published, I knew I had to talk to about it. David St. Louis of Elite Prospects released a video on Flyers prospect Jett Luchanko. The whole thesis of it is that he could arrive earlier than expected in the NHL and as soon as the 2024-2025 season. So I just had to talk to him about it, exactly why he thinks that, his skill set, if it can translate to the NHL, can his speed translate, what he looks for in prospects, a lot of the general talk, um, just everything about Luchanko, what he liked about last season, what he looks for this upcoming season, not in the NHL. And the big question is if he can be a first line center and partner perfectly with Matvei Michkov as kind of a dynamic duo for the Flyers for years to come. So check it out. I love this chat. Quick little chat about things to really get hyped up about Jett Luchanko. So with me today is David St. Louis of Elite Prospects. How are you doing today?
I'm great. You?
Good, good, good. So of course, like with Elite Prospects, as soon as something gets released, it's kind of the place to go and see that thing. Like as soon as that Luchenko or anything with Michkov, of course, for us, it's like immediate, just like that's the best source and kind of what you're
Thank
expecting,
you.
right? Yeah,
Yeah,
there's no problem.
we aim
Uh,
to be that.
Yeah, like so what is I guess like before we kind of get into Luchenko and everything in your latest video, like what is kind of your process for making these videos? Like is it fully just self-control like self-motivated with like something that you see and then you're like I really need to point that out, or is it more so like kind of this will be interesting and people will watch this?
It's a bit of both. I tend to, especially with YouTube, I tend to aim my videos toward on prospects that are going to be of interest to other people. Honestly, I target a bigger market sometimes and bigger prospects who are of interest in general. And the way I make them is that I usually remember games from past season that, especially in the summer, that I really like of the prospect, and I just target certain shifts that I know are going to be interesting and contain a lot of information, and I try to break those down because I love talking about prospects, but what I love even more is breaking down the details of the game. So if I can do that and talk about the projection of a prospect, it's really the best for me.
Yeah, like and that makes sense. Like is there a certain way that you've kind of evolved your thinking in covering these prospects and really detailing the game? Like, is there something that maybe 5 years ago when you're looking at a player that you didn't really pay attention to, but now it's a lot of the primary thing kind of thing?
Yeah, it's been a long evolution, honestly. When I first started doing this, I was all about the details. I would go super deep into skating motions, mechanics, and all of this, and that's because it's my big interest. Like I really like breaking down the details of the game. But as I learned to scout and learn about prospects, I realized that sometimes it's more the big picture that matters. So general trends, which leagues are stronger, which kinds of prospects tend to make it. Like you cannot have a board made of 5'9" super skilled prospects and be like put them all in your top 10. That doesn't work, honestly, because they have a lower chance of making the league. So I guess what the NHL scouts were telling me at first was right, and you learn that by experience. Like you have some targets, some prospect types, like a bigger defenseman, they tend to make it at a higher rate. So I've kind of tried to integrate that into my personal preferences so that I can have a mix now. I have my own way of valuing players, but it's influenced by experience and by seeing some prospects fail, seeing some prospects make it. So it's really all about experience. A big part of scouting is experience, really. And you
Mhm.
cannot bypass that, unfortunately.
Yeah, and even that even comes from like I've been writing about hockey for over a decade now, but even like when I first started, of course, you kind of get really excited about the small, fast players. And you again, like you said, you want your whole team to be that, be like, oh, all offense. My blue line is basically six Kalen Addisons kind of thing. Like yeah, and then you kind of like you said, evolve and kind of like, oh, a player with size actually means something. Like you listen
Yeah.
to players that actually like are on the ice against these players. Like, yeah, I was afraid of Shea Weber because he would destroy me, and that matters of how you enter the zone and all these things.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's super interesting. Of kind of just I feel like the general public prospect kind of analysis is shifting towards that too. Like you get still people that really want that high offense and high octane player, but then I feel like all the like it's just generally getting so much better of and more nuanced, I think, that of course
Yeah.
Elite Prospects is at the head of that.
We're trying. We're trying to be the most nuanced and the most
Yeah.
nerdy about prospects, but still have like a kind of general perspective so that it doesn't get too deep at times.
Yeah, yeah. You don't want to like throw anyone away, right? To scare
Yeah.
anyone. So yeah, so obviously why I invited you to the show is kind of your recent Jett Luchanko video. So of course the Flyers first round pick in 2024, kind of a little bit surprise pick, as some might say, but kind of rewinding and kind of not touching on your video immediately, but kind of throughout the draft year and throughout Luchanko's past season, kind of what did you see a lot from him?
Yeah, honestly, he started this draft here as more of a mid-round projected player, kind of player. Like he was playing mostly in the fourth line the year before. We didn't get to see him that much. We knew that he had speed because that was evident, but the rest of his game you can't really show it in a fourth line role. So we had to wait this year. Matthew Poitras left Guelph and gave him a space up the lineup. He took the first line and then he started scoring a lot, but it still took us a bit of time to really appreciate his game and the details of it because at first it's really the speed that wows you, but then there's all those details, the way he wins battles, the way he back checks it, the way he uses his stick in the defensive position. So there are a ton of interesting elements. It just takes a while for players who are more who have this kind of more developed two-way game and those offensive tools. But really, what makes them valuable is the combination of both. So they have the offensive skill set and the defensive skill set, and that defensive skill set takes months to really appreciate and really value right. And I think toward the end, he had really ascension with the U18s. He played super well. He was super reliable in a team that lacked center, and he was always on the ice. So I think that really helped his stock and sold him to the Flyers.
Yeah, and kind of segueing perfectly into my next kind of question with the particularly the Flyers, because of course selecting him at 13th and passing over Z Boom and Constellanius was another person that was on the radar of someone that the Flyers might like. Um, and again, like a surprise pick. Like as seeing the player, like did you see their thought process? Like did you fully understand it and like it, or just kind of understand and be like, oh yeah, that makes sense from like an NHL point of view kind of thing.
I it's easy to understand why they made that pick. I think there was something about Steve Bouillon and his agent and where he played and all of this. So we won't get into that because that's not super
Yeah.
interesting. The pick is made, so we'll just focus on Luchenko. I think after there was a tire for us with Steve Bouillon at the top, but after that, all of these other players they were similar in value. Like we had him in the 30s, I think, Luchenko, but that doesn't mean we think he's a bad prospect. Like honestly, when you um, get out of that top tier if you have a prospect at 15th overall or 35, there's not a big gap between them. And if you just compare Helenius and Luchenko, one has even more details, even more hockey sense. Helenius, that is, and Luchenko has the dynamic speed. Like, who's going to become a better player? It's really hard to tell. So, if you're targeting a center, I think Luchenko was a fine pick at 13th overall. But it's just the thought process behind that. Maybe Flyers should evaluate that. Was that the best pick, really? But
Right.
they made it now, and I think it's a really good fit for the team, actually. And that is going to help the prospect develop a lot because we always think about prospects in a vacuum, like well, what's their value in the draft year? But honestly, that matters a lot, but it's just half of the question. The other half is really, do they have a place in the team? Do teams value them? Like if you draft a prospect at 13 overall, that means you value them a lot. You're going to make room in your lineup for them. You're going to develop them right and pay a lot of attention to them, and that's going to help them develop and probably surpass our expectations pre-draft of Luchenko. Like just because he was drafted at 13 overall by the team that really values them, I think it gives him a boost instantly. Honestly.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the criticism from some people was from the Flyers, and you touched on it a little bit, but kind of they did draft for need. They needed that center position. Like, do you agree? I guess this is more a general philosophy question, not particularly with the Flyers, but um, like, do you think that someone's so desperate in need for center? Because I think before this draft, you could say like Owen McLaughlin was their best center prospect, like that actually might stick down the middle. Like Vladimir Rizzo won't stick there, whatever, all these things. Um, like, do you think that is a right process to go through, especially with the first round pick that's so and they traded that one later, so they couldn't really address that need later, and they didn't pick in the till the 50 something. Do you think that's the right kind of move and mindset to go into 13th overall pick and really address that center need?
I think 3 years ago I would have said no, absolutely not. But again, I've learned from my ways, and there's a lot more nuance to this. And I've touched on this before, but to develop a prospect right, you need the right spots in your lineup. Like if you want a player to become a top six player, you probably need to play him in your top six at some point. When they're just on the cusp of it being ready, you place them in good line mates in your top six, and usually it helps the prospect develop that last part of their game that's going to help them reach their upside. And if you don't have those open spots in your lineup and you draft a prospect that's a bit redundant in your system, it's going to be harder for him to really develop. So if there's an open way in front of him, in front of Luchanko in this case, I think that's going to help him push his upside. And there's a much higher chance now that he's going to be this top six center just because of where he is now. So I think drafting for needs is not the way to go in general, but when you have such a big need and so many open spots, the center prospects just increase in value, not because you need them, but because they're going to become more valuable in your lineup because there are open spots to develop them in.
Yeah, and I think what you're saying is also applicable to not selecting Buum. So Danny Briere after the fact, instead of the whole Kurt Overhart, Tyler Gauthier kind of mess, Briere said basically like we have Cam York, we have Jamie Drysdale, we have Emil Andre as examples. Like Emil a little bit step below, but still we
Yeah.
have guys that play similarly to Bouillon. And are also kind of around the 6 foot, under 6 foot sort of size, and they want more size. So yeah, I think that's like why they also didn't go Bouillon, because again, it would be feel redundant, even though if Bouillon's ceiling was hypothetically higher than all those players, still it might feel a little redundant with the players that they have.
Yeah.
So kind of sticking with Luchenko a lot. Um, can you so can do you think he has the skill set to be that top line center? Not even like top six, but like lead kind of a first line, like all situations kind of player.
That would be, I think, too much in terms of expectations.
Hmm.
He has the speed. Um, the issue with him is that he has this great tool in his speed, but he doesn't know how to fully use it right now. And there's always a bit of an issue when a prospect relies so much on speed and pace to create at the junior level. Sometimes that speed gap with his opponents is going to get reduced at the AHL level and at the NHL level. So for him, it's all about developing his playmaking ability. If next year we see a playmaking growth even more, like he's a good playmaker, but if he becomes capable of really shifting defenses with deception and really controlling the flow of the play even more, then I would say, yeah, maybe he could reach a top line spot. But it's rare that the prospects make this massive of a jump in their development, even if they're younger, even if they didn't have the best circumstances in their draft year, because Guelph was a bad team. It's hard to develop in a bad team, but it would be surprising as a jump in terms of playmaking development and upside as a result. It could happen, but the chance is small. I think more realistic is like second line center. That's probably his kind of ceiling upside for me right now. And the most realistic upside is like middle six, someone who moves between third line and second line depending on fit and where. I think he's always going to be a high minute player anyway. Like he might not be the offensive driver because he maybe he lacks that extra offensive touch, but in a system that values defense and matchup and all this things that I think Tortorella values, is going to get used a lot, because if he can play against the other team's best element and play on the penalty kill, play on the power play, like, he's going to get a lot of minutes. And that might be symbolically a first line or a counter role, but I don't think it's we're ever going to conceptualize him as a first liner because of the maybe he won't be that point per game center. So there are a lot of elements to this. He needs more development, and I think his fit on the team is going to change the perception of his value too.
Yeah, and you touched on it a little bit there, but what do you kind of want to see from Luchenko in his draft plus 1 year? What do you want to see for the upcoming season?
I want to see speed, but I want to see speed modulated. So instead of like running down the boards, outspeeding defenders, I want him to shift down, cut laterally, try and move them, create gaps for teammates, like use that speed in a way to control the flow of the play instead of just in a way to beat defenders in a straight line or something like this. Like he has to do more than abuse mistakes and abuse and create by simply pushing back defenders, making them scramble back and scramble back and all this, but really control and deceive and manipulate. We see those skills on the power play. Like he has them. He can fake a shot and push and place a puck across. Like he can do that, but we don't see it at 5-on-5 as much when the flow of the play is faster and all this. But I think it's a potential development for him. Like I said, few prospects really make that jump from just having a great tool and using that tool to really manipulate with it, like deceive defenders, slow down, reaccelerate, change lane, make defenders move one way, attack the other way. Some prospects just stay very speedy, but not manipulative. But I think with those flashes on the power play, there may be a higher chance that he reaches that kind of development than others. But again, it's small. It's always when I talk about prospect, it's always about probability. Like it's a chance of reaching something. It's not like it's going to happen or it's not going to happen. It's based on experience and watching the player develop. Sometimes they can reach it. Sometimes there's a smaller chance of something happening, a bigger chance. But I think with Luchanko, there's a small chance that he does make that development. It's going to depend on his environment too. If he doesn't have creative teammates that position well, it's going to be harder for him to make that kind of jump too. So there are a lot of details to all of this.
Yeah, and kind of we've touched a lot of things and kind of avoided the actual topic of the video. But obviously, like
It's fine. We're still
we,
talking about a video anyway. It's the same things
yeah,
that
kind
I've
of
said before.
weaving through and out. But so the general like I guess thesis and kind of point is that Luchenko can definitely come to the NHL earlier than people are expecting, like typical OHL kind of 2 years, whatever. Like, do you think that he could be playing in a 9 game tryout or five or whatever this
Yes.
season? Yeah.
Everyone thinks that's crazy, but I really see it. So again, it's a small chance of happening. It's a long shot projection,
Mm.
and the Flyers usually don't do this. I've been told this a
Right.
lot on Twitter after releasing the video. It's not common, but Luchenko is a different kind of prospect. Like he has all the NHL details you want. He has the tools to survive in the league for a while because he's super speedy. He can establish body positioning on bigger player. He's super athletic. Like he won. I'm not sure if he won those combined testing categories,
He
but
was
he
like,
finished at the top for a lot of them.
yeah, like I think a lot of them it was like top five at least. Like
So
it was so
yeah,
much.
so he has that. He has the details, the defensive game. Like you can see a portrait of a player who could fit in an NHL lineup much faster. It's also my video title was also a play on words because it was fast track onto the NHL, but because he's a really speedy player, so I really like
Yeah.
that title. But I think there's a higher chance than most 18-year-olds prospects that he's going to play his 9 games and maybe even continue a bit, maybe on a third line, fourth line, second line for a time. I think it's possible. Like, don't expect it as something that's going to happen, but there's a higher chance for him than other players drafted in the same range in years past that it's going to happen, just because he has the details, the athletic frame, and I think Tortorella is going to really like him from the start.
Yeah, like honestly, Tortorella just loves anyone that gives a shit. So,
He
so
does. He really does. Like, if
yes,
there's
yeah,
one team to this, he really gives a shit. So that's the way to describe him.
yeah, honestly, that's perfect. Yeah, like I think the Flyers, it's tricky because I watched your video, I loved your video, and then I was like, okay, maybe like at the beginning of the year is a little much, but I feel like maybe at the end of the year, like after Guelph is probably because they're probably going to be out if they're not traded. The season's going to be done in like early April because maybe even if they get into the first round of the playoffs like last year, um, yeah, it'll be done. So maybe they'll have like 5 or 7 games left of the regular season, not much to play for. Maybe Flyers will be without a couple centers because they made deadline moves where they stink. Um, I think that is like a like
Compromise.
a tone down, like a just a turning down the hype knob a little bit.
Yeah, or maybe
But yeah,
just next year. Like even if he
yeah,
plays next year, it's already pretty fast for a 13th overall
yeah,
pick. Like I think he is on the fast track to an NHL spot. That depends if it's might not be this year. It might be next year, but I think it's going to happen sooner than most people think. Honestly,
yeah. Because like he has all the tools that a lot of prospects I feel like, especially from junior hockey, that like that he already has everything that they usually need to work on. So now it's like, okay, now we just need to get the stuff that is usually just comes with a top 10 pick or something like that.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much, David, for joining Broad Street Hockey. And yeah, where can people find you and your work?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter. Just search my name. And on EP Ring side, I write a lot of articles. We're going to have the Flyers pool article. Like we're ranking our the top prospect pool in the NHL, and soon we're going to get to the Flyers probably in 2 weeks, something like this. So they're pretty high on our list. So
Is that a little spoiler? That's a
yeah,
pretty
I'm not
late.
sure where exactly they are, honestly, but they're higher than where we are right now. But it's going to come out, and you're probably going to be able to read about like 20 of their prospects. And we're going to give you tool grades and scouting reports on them, update on their projection. We watch all of those prospects, so it's not like a repeat of past year edition or of our draft guide. Like we watch them more, and we rewatch the prospects we ranked before, so we get really updated scouting reports on them. And if you want to watch my videos, watch Luchanko video, the Michka video, it's on our
Mhm.
YouTube platform. I think you're going to find them interesting because they're really detailed prospects and you can appreciate their game even more if you watch these videos, I think.
Yeah, especially the Mishkov video is great. And I didn't even touch on this because like I feel like this is the large like question mark over the Flyers franchise. Of course, Mishkov is here and everything. But just one last question about
Go
Luchenko.
ahead.
Um, do you think him and Michkov could theoretically work together? Do you see their skill sets working together? Luchenko kind of the speed, Michkov the brain kind of thing. Like, what do you see if they're a tandem that works together?
Yes, absolutely. It's really a nice fit, honestly, for multiple reasons. Like Luchenko has better defense than Michkov right now. Again, I talked about this. Michkov could maybe develop his defensive side, but it's more of a question mark. Luchenko has it. Like there's no question there. He's going to be a good defensive center in the NHL. But more than that, like with his Michkov really likes to change the tempo of the game, slow down, accelerate, and play off his teammates. And Luchenko is kind of like that. He loves to make given goals all over the ice, but he plays at full speed all the time. That's good, but sometimes you need to slow down to really create better offense. And I think Michkov could help him learn that and play off of him. And just because Luchenko is so fast, he's going to be able to push back defenders and create space for Michkov to operate. So, and Luchenko loves to play around the net and retrieve pucks. Like it's really a really nice complement between these two. And I don't know if the Flyers had this in mind when they drafted Luchenko, but probably in some way because
A little bit.
honestly, the fit is pretty perfect.
Yeah, there's no better note to go off on. No matter what, if we see Luchenko this season or anything, the hype is going to be incredible. Just imagining them lifting cups and everything like that.
Perfect.
Anyways, thank you so much. Subscribe to EP Ringside. It's a great source for not only prospects, but college hockey, NHL, everything going on. Um, and yeah, subscribe to Broad Street Hockey, subscribe to the podcast, subscribe to the YouTube, Twitter, everything. And thank you again, David, for coming on.
It was fun. Thank you.
Thanks.